The Sydney Opera House, a disastrous construction project in history, was won by Danish architect Jørn Utzon in an architecture competition held in New South Wales in 1927. The project, with an initial budget of $7 million Australian dollars and a 4-year schedule, took 14 years and a total of $102 million Australian dollars to complete. Utzon's Red Book of the project, which included designs, consultant reports, and plans, was not a comprehensive working document for the building's construction. The client's insistence on starting work as soon as possible further exacerbated the scandal, with more people contributing to the scandal. In today's video, we will be looking into how the Sydney Opera House turned out to become a disaster project. Let's get right into details. Every client must clearly define its project's goals and objectives, focusing on quality, cost, and time. In the Sydney Opera House project, the first priority is quality, as it was the project's primary purpose. No deadlines or budgetary restrictions were set, allowing architects complete creative freedom. This approach was to ensure the project's success. Now, let's analyze the main reasons that led to it being a financial disaster. Improper planning. The architect was the primary stakeholder, but Utzon's focus on design rather than schedule and budgetary constraints caused difficulties. Utzon worked in collaboration with Ove Arup, who oversaw the engineering and structure throughout the project. The team was in charge of the heating, ventilation, lighting, acoustics, mechanics, and electrics, along with a few other subcontractors. Instead of a dedicated project manager, Utzon and Arup worked together. The client, the state of New South Wales, was the other primary stakeholder. This includes Joe Cahill, the Labour Premier, and the Australian government, which initiated the project's competition. The project was to be supervised by a part-time executive committee, but the committee members lacked a technical understanding. The government eventually turned into a barrier for the project team, preventing modifications while operations were going on, which led to delays and cost overruns. The general public was an indirect stakeholder because they cared about the project's success. But the stakeholders didn't only contribute to the Sydney Opera House being a disaster. There were other factors like the resignation of the architect. A few years into the building phase, the project's delivery came under increasing pressure as the government changed. After a series of arguments with the clients and several threats of resignation, Utzon left Australia and the project, never to be seen again. Despite widespread protests against his termination, nothing was done. After that, he is not known to have worked on any other projects except for the Opera House, which he never even saw in its completed state. One of the biggest conspiracies in architectural history is reputed to be this one. The lack of concrete drawings caused a delay in the construction process, to the extent that it took 10 years to construct the building as it stands today. Let's get right into the construction process. The construction had 3 phases. The construction of the foundation block came first, followed by the curved roof shells and the hall interiors. During the second phase of building the roof shells, the biggest obstacle was encountered. Changes in the structural design scheme necessitated multiple rebuilds of the columns. The roof was reportedly designed more than a dozen times before the final design, which envisioned each shell as a section of a single sphere built by arches cast in a common mold at different lengths, was decided upon. Some have speculated that Utzon came up with the solution while peeling an orange. The opera and ballet performances were scheduled to take place in the Opera Theatre in the Minor Hall, which was formally designated as the venue for both concerts and operas. The multi-purpose Major Hall, which was originally designated to host both concerts and opera, became exclusively a concert venue. The architect's initial seating and acoustic plans for the main hall were deemed inadequate, which prompted a redesign that, when it was finished, caused additional acoustic issues for orchestras and performers. Guess what made the matters worse? No specified project plan or leadership was stated. The Sydney Opera House, well known for being Australia's national symbol, is a magnificent feat of engineering. The building's construction and structural design were far ahead of their time. Few people are aware, though, that the story behind it is highly scandalous and fraught with controversy. Much before the entire design scheme was finished, the New South Wales government issued orders to begin construction. Not only did the project begin without finalized plans in place, but shortly after construction started, the client changed the floor plan from 2 theatres to 4, necessitating modifications to the plans and designs while work was ongoing. To support the 1.8-hectare building, construction started on about 588 concrete piers. Until the end of the building phase, this gave rise to several disputes. The absence of a project manager also made the pandemonium that followed even worse. An impromptu partnership between Utzon and the engineer, Ove Arup, handled management of the project, aided by a hurriedly assembled team of heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, mechanical, and electrical subcontractors in place of a single point of contact for questions and guidance. Finding consensus among the members of the management team was often an elusive goal, not surprising given their disparate goals and perspectives. As if that wasn't enough, there was no clearly defined budget. The cost of the project was also unknown since the design was not finalized. As soon as it started, costs started to rise, first because of change orders, and then because it was found that the site surveys were inaccurate. From then on, the budget was all up. The podium, the external shells, and the interiors and windows comprised the 3 sections of the construction project, according to Utzon's plan. After the first phase, a government oversight committee was in charge of payments and was required to hold on to some until it had confirmation that the real work had been completed. Early budget estimates for the project were based on inadequate site surveys and design drawings, which subsequently caused disputes. In 1952, the first stage contractors were able to successfully claim $1.2 million Australian dollars in additional costs as a result of design modifications. The project was 47 weeks behind because he was certain he would be called back to finish the project after the new team failed. This was not the case, and as a result of the lack of available designs, new ones had to be made using the Opera House's current structure, which led to the discovery of numerous unanticipated problems. The project's estimated total cost increased dramatically as a result, reaching 102 million Australian dollars. Having spent years defending the government against mounting expenses, this was unexpected and almost insulting to Utzon. Evidence of his unfair treatment was the revelation that they had accepted that budget, which exceeded Utzon's initial estimate by more than 4 times. It took 17 years of redesigns, underestimating, and cost overruns for Queen Elizabeth II to officially open the Sydney Opera House in 1973. Due in large part to the lottery system established to aid in its funding, the building was financially self-sufficient by 1975. The completion of his work, which was hailed as an amazing achievement in architecture, was something that Utzon would never see in Australia. Even though the Opera House is a prime example of what not to do, project managers still blindly follow their lead. Revisions in organizational priorities, imprecise project requirements estimates, and modifications to the project's goals were the top 3 causes of projects failing in the preceding year, according to a 2015 Raconteur survey. Moving deadlines, adding or changing features, and unanticipated risks are common causes of cost overruns and rising costs, according to Bell Integration's Chief Technology Officer, Andy Soines. One of the most famous iconic structures in the world, and a universal representation of Australia, is the Sydney Opera House, but it failed because it did not adhere to any of the standard procedures for project management and accounting. Therefore, subsequent projects like this should be carefully planned out to avoid ending up like this. Adequate resource management planning ought to leave someone in charge of project operations, and the budget meticulously drafted. A lack of management and accounting expectations can result in excessive and unnecessary material costs. At every point during the project's development, the resources schedule should be monitored to avoid unnecessary delays. Fortunately, project managers working today have access to cutting-edge technology that can help them avoid personnel, budget, and schedule problems altogether, or minimize their effects on the project as a whole. Supervisors can prevent the production process from being derailed by paying attention to little details and by using software that is intended to manage project resources, such as materials, subcontractors, or other essential components. Professional services automation is especially helpful in keeping key performance indicators and other metrics on target and on track, as well as for thoroughly assessing project processes over time. Maybe 10 years ago, Australia